You're sitting on the couch, half listening to the television, when you see it. A friend's post from Greece. Not just anywhere, but Santorini, the cliffside village where the buildings are whitewashed to a blinding glow, and the sea is so blue, it looks like it's been painted in. They're standing on a balcony at sunset, the sky melting from gold to rose to deep violet. Their arm is around someone beautiful, the kind of person who looks like they stepped straight out of a dream. The caption says something about feeling grateful, blessed, and alive. Swipe. They're at a dinner table draped in white linen, the plates scattered with grilled fish, olives, and glasses of chilled wine. The light is soft, the air looks warm, and you can almost hear the water lapping somewhere below. But you're not just looking at the scenery anymore. Your mind has already gone somewhere else. How can they afford this? What do they even do for work that lets them take a trip like that? How did they meet that person? Why are they living that life while I'm here? The beauty of their moment has become the backdrop for 1,000 tiny self-interrogations. And in that instant, you're not really seeing them anymore. You're seeing yourself reflected in what they have that you don't. This is envy in its unpolished form, the kind that sneaks in quietly, rewrites the story in your own image, and turns someone else's joy into a measure of your worth. And today, we're going to talk about how to stop turning their view into your mirror.
Hello and welcome to The Psychology of Us with Professor R.J. Starr, where we explore the mind's influence on life, relationships, and society. R.J. Starr is an existential psychologist, professor, and author dedicated to exploring the core challenges of human existence, how we find meaning, embrace responsibility, and navigate life's challenges. Known for a thought-provoking yet accessible approach, RJ inspires listeners to cultivate self-awareness, emotional intelligence, authenticity, and purpose. This podcast is designed for all psychology enthusiasts, practitioners, students, and anyone curious about why we think, feel, and behave the way we do. Each episode unpacks theories, explores complex questions, and offers insights that deepen understanding of the human experience. So settle in, stay curious, and discover the psychology of us.
We don't like to admit to envy. It's one of those emotions that feels beneath us. We'll say we were curious. We'll say we were surprised. Maybe even that we were inspired by someone else's good fortune. But inspired is the socially acceptable stand-in for what we often actually felt. A sharp little pang that says they have something I don't. Envy has an image problem. It's been reduced to this cartoonish version of itself. Green-eyed monsters, bitter gossip, petty resentment. And because that's what we associate with the word, most people would rather insist they've never felt it than recognize it when it's there. But envy is far more common and far more subtle than we want to believe. Here's the real definition. Envy is the discomfort or agitation that arises when someone else has something we want. Whether that something is a thing, an experience, a relationship, or even a quality of character. It's not about fear of losing what we already have. That's jealousy. Envy is about a gap between what exists in their life and what exists in ours. And because we live in a culture where everyone's highlight reel is in our pocket all day, that gap is in our faces constantly. A perfectly framed photo, a perfectly timed announcement, a perfectly curated moment. We consume other people's milestones the way we consume ads. Brief, polished, and with just enough emotional voltage to make us aware of what we're missing. But envy doesn't always come with a sneer or a roll of the eyes. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's wrapped in genuine admiration. You are happy for them. But somewhere in that happiness, there's a second layer. And that second layer is where the measuring begins. We start running the mental math. How old are they compared to me? How did they make that happen? Why hasn't that happened for me yet? What choices did I make that put me here instead of there? We don't post these questions publicly. We don't even always say them out loud, but we think them. And when we think them often enough, we train ourselves to meet other people's joy not as joy, but as data for evaluating our own worth. The reason it's worth naming envy, really naming it, is because unacknowledged envy has a way of shaping how we show up. It can make us withhold our enthusiasm, minimize someone's accomplishment, or subtly pull away from them. And in those moments, it's not the envy we're protecting. It's our pride. So if we're going to talk about how to stop turning their view into our mirror, we have to start here. By saying the word, most people won't, and letting it be the honest starting point for everything that comes next. Envy isn't random. It's not some moral flaw that certain people just happen to be born with. It's a predictable byproduct of how the human brain processes information about other people. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger introduced what's now known as social comparison theory. The idea is simple but profound. We figure out who we are, how we're doing, and where we fit in the world by comparing ourselves to other people. It's an ancient survival tool. Thousands of years ago, knowing where you stood in the social order helped you figure out your role, your safety, and your access to resources. It's still part of the architecture of our minds. The problem is that in a hyper-connected world, we are exposed to far more people and far more curated versions of their lives than our brains were ever built to process. You're not comparing yourself to a few neighbors in the village anymore. You're comparing yourself to hundreds of people at once, all of them selectively broadcasting their most enviable moments. Envy begins when this ancient comparison system collides with something that matters to us personally. You see someone in Greece on that balcony, and if travel, freedom, or beauty are values you hold, even quietly, your brain flags it as relevant. That's when the self-referential reflex kicks in. The self-referential reflex is the tendency to run every piece of information about someone else's life through the filter of, what does this mean about me? It's fast, it's automatic, and it's not always conscious. You're not setting out to make it about you. But in milliseconds, your brain has placed their experience on a mental scoreboard and checked where you rank. Neuroscience has something to say here too. Mirror neurons, the cells in our brain that fire both when we act and when we observe someone else acting, can make us feel as if we're experiencing their joy alongside them. That's why seeing someone laugh can make you smile, and why watching a beautiful sunset video can stir emotion in you. But when that vicarious feeling runs up against scarcity, the belief that opportunities, love, beauty, or success are limited, it's hijacked. Instead of feeling, that's wonderful, it becomes, that's wonderful and I don't have it. That little pivot, from shared joy to personal deficit, is the birthplace of envy. And because it's so quick, it can feel like a fact rather than a thought. It feels like truth. They have something. I don't. Understanding this matters because it means envy isn't evidence that you're small-hearted. It's evidence that your brain is doing what it was built to do, but in an environment it wasn't built for. And once you see the mechanics, comparison, self-reference, scarcity, you can start to interrupt them.
Have you ever wished there was a clear, intelligent guide to understanding the human mind and emotions? Without the jargon, without the shortcuts. The Psychology of Being Human, an authoritative guide to mind, emotion, and meaning, was written to do exactly that. Psychology educator R.J. Starr brings together decades of research, teaching, and lived insight to show how we think, feel, and make meaning. The book offers fresh perspectives on emotional maturity, identity, belief, and the ways our inner lives shape our choices, relationships, and resilience. There has never been a single work that brings together this full spectrum of what it means to be a human being, mind, emotion, and meaning, into one coherent and practical framework. This book is an unflinching, deeply informed exploration for anyone who wants to understand themselves and others with greater depth, clarity, and compassion. In an age of noise, distraction, and polarization, it offers a rare and essential way of seeing the mind and emotions as they truly are. You'll find chapters that explore the structure of thought and emotion, how beliefs take root and resist change, and why emotional capacity matters more than emotional control. Each idea is grounded in psychological science, yet written in a way that feels personal, relevant, and easy to connect with. What sets this book apart is the way it treats complexity. Not as something to be simplified or glossed over, but as something to understand and navigate with confidence. It doesn't shy away from the hard truths about avoidance, distortion, and performance, but it also offers a way forward that respects both your intelligence and your humanity. It's rigorous but readable, grounded in science, yet deeply human. Whether you're in the field of psychology or simply curious about understanding yourself and others more deeply, this is a book you'll want to keep close. The Psychology of Being Human, an authoritative guide to mind, emotion, and meaning, will be released worldwide on September 20th, 2025, with pre-orders opening August 15th. Reserve your copy early and be part of the first wave of readers to explore this groundbreaking work by Professor R.J. Starr.
The trouble with envy isn't just that it feels bad in the moment. It's what it quietly does over time, to our relationships, to the way we see the world, and to the way we see ourselves. The first cost is perceptual. Envy distorts the lens we look through. Instead of seeing the other person in full, their character, their complexity, their own struggles, we start to see them primarily as the person who has that thing, the thing we don't have. It's like reducing an entire novel down to one highlighted sentence and judging the whole story from there. The second cost is relational. People can feel when their joy isn't landing cleanly. Even if you don't say anything sharp, even if you mask it in polite applause, there's a subtle difference between congratulations that are wholehearted and congratulations that are laced with ambivalence. Over time, those moments can make people hesitate before sharing their wins with you. Not because they don't like you, but because joy is fragile, and we instinctively protect it from people who can't quite meet it without bending it. The third cost is internal. Living with chronic envy means living in a constant state of quiet subtraction. You measure yourself against someone else's highlight and find yourself lacking, and when that pattern repeats often enough, it stops feeling like a comparison and starts feeling like a fact. It erodes your sense of enoughness. You begin to see your own life as a series of missing pieces, and even your own joys can start to feel smaller because you're viewing them through a deficit mindset. Envy can also plant seeds of subtle hostility. You may not even realize you're pulling back, being less supportive, or quietly diminishing someone's accomplishment in your own mind. But those shifts matter. They chip away at trust, connection, and the sense that you can celebrate each other's milestones without keeping score. And here's the most paradoxical cost. Envy rarely moves us closer to what we actually want. It can be a powerful emotional signal, but when it festers, it doesn't mobilize us. It freezes us. Instead of learning from the person or drawing inspiration, we can get stuck in a loop of rumination and resentment, which only widens the gap we were focused on in the first place. Envy is expensive. It costs clarity, connection, and the peace that comes from letting joy, whether it's yours or someone else's, simply be what it is. And if we leave it unchecked, it will keep charging us interest in every interaction, every scroll, every quiet moment of self-assessment. If envy is the reflex to measure ourselves against someone else's moment, then empathic joy is the ability to let that moment belong entirely to them, without turning it into a mirror. In Buddhist psychology, there's a word for this, mudita. It means joy in the happiness of others, untainted by self-reference. In Western psychology, we might call it unselfish celebration. Whatever we call it, the essence is the same. It's not about you. That sounds simple, but it takes deliberate work because it runs counter to the brain's default wiring. The self-referential reflex doesn't turn off on its own. You have to catch it in motion. Here's where to start. First, when you notice envy rising, pause and get curious about the exact moment it happened. Was it the image of the place, the person they were with, the accomplishment itself? That clue, will tell you what value or longing of your own just got activated. Sometimes envy is less about wanting their life and more about realizing you've neglected something in your own. Second, make the mental shift from self-reference to scene-keeping. When you see someone else's joy, resist the urge to place yourself in the picture. Instead, anchor your attention in their reality, the details of what they might be seeing, hearing, feeling. If it's that Santorini balcony, imagine the smell of the sea air for them, the warmth of the stone under their feet. Let the scene stay theirs in your mind, untouched by your own storyline. Third, speak or act in a way that strengthens the moment for them. This could be a simple, wholehearted, "I'm so happy for you," or a thoughtful question that lets them linger in the glow of what they experienced. The key is to make your contribution additive, not comparative. Finally, remember that someone else's joy is proof of possibility. Scarcity tells us that if they have it, we can't. But abundance reframes it. Their experience is evidence that this kind of beauty or success or connection exists in the world. And if it exists, it's not inherently closed to you. It's just not your turn in this exact moment. Over time, practicing empathic joy changes your emotional posture. You become the person people want to share good news with. Not because you fake enthusiasm, but because your presence doesn't drain their joy. And that has its own quiet reward. You get to live in an emotional landscape where beauty isn't a competition and where every good thing, even if it's not yours, still enriches the world you live in. So let's go back to that balcony in Santorini, the whitewashed walls, the deep blue sea, the way the last light of day wraps everything in gold. Someone you know is standing there, taking it all in, the view, the air, the company, and sharing a piece of it with you through a photograph. The first time you saw it, your mind might have gone straight to the questions. How did they afford it? How did they get that life? Why not me? That's the reflex we've been talking about, the pull to turn their moment into a measure of our own. But imagine something different. Imagine seeing that same photo and letting it be fully theirs. You don't step into it. You don't rewrite it in your own colors. You don't measure yourself against it. You just stay on the outside of the frame, smiling at the fact that it exists in their life, in the world at all. That's the work. It's not about pretending you'll never feel envy again. It's about recognizing when your brain starts pulling you into the mirror and choosing, even for a moment, to stay with the view instead. When we can do that, when we can let someone else's joy belong entirely to them, we give them something rare. We give them the freedom to share without shrinking. And we give ourselves the relief of not having to turn every beautiful thing into a referendum on our own lives. Their view doesn't have to be your mirror. It can just be their view. And you can be glad it exists.
That wraps up this episode of The Psychology of Us with Professor R.J. Starr. Each conversation is a step toward greater understanding of ourselves, each other, and the forces that shape human behavior. Listeners are invited to continue the conversation by sharing their thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions at profrjstarr@outlook.com. Every message helps shape future episodes, ensuring the discussions remain relevant, thought-provoking, and meaningful. For those who find value in these explorations, subscribing and leaving a review is a great way to support the podcast and bring these insights to a wider audience. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep exploring the psychology of us.